Hi there, and welcome to the latest episode of Chip Shop Chat. I'm Stephen Lepitak, editor of The Drum, and I am joined by two more entrants into the Chip Shop Awards who are going to talk about the work that they have produced, and I will ask them to introduce themselves.
Hi there, my name's Lauren and I work at Something Big agency, and I'm traditionally a content manager, but my colleague and I, Sam, have been working a bit more flexibly recently as a bit of a creative partnership to come up with a couple of fresh ideas.
And I'm Sam Hennig. I'm a creative strategist, but as Lauren says, our roles are relatively flexible really at Something Big. So we kind of get to work across a lot of different things. My role traditionally is more kind of the strategic behind the creative, but recently I've actually been getting involved in the creative itself, and it's been a really great experience and opened up to kind of fresh ideas, as Lauren says.
Well, thank you both for joining me to talk about your entry into the Chip Shop Awards. Sam, can I get you to talk about what is the piece of work that you've entered?
Yeah, so what we've entered is basically a concept for WWF. And what we wanted to do was basically look at how we link the problems with climate change to what is more traditionally the WWF outlook, which is kind of specific species. But obviously biodiversity is hugely important when it comes to those specific species. So we created a concept that actually that kind of moved away from their more traditional stuff, which is species in particular, and removed any imagery of any animals or anything like that from it, and actually used the animal's voice instead. So we created a concept which is called Love Letters to Humanity. And basically what it does is it gives the animals a voice to speak to us as humans and say that they need us. And it's written in a way that suggests a love letter, a traditional love letter, but actually it turns that on its head. And what it does is use those kind of classic tropes of a love letter to lull you into a full sense of security. But then when you read it, actually it feels quite hard hitting and makes you feel for that animal, basically.
Lauren, can I ask, why did you choose this as a subject to tackle?
So we had a bit of a brief to tackle for WWF, and they were looking to bring this topic of climate change to their audience and help really get their donors to understand why the environmental topic is actually so intrinsically linked to saving species, like Sam said. And so we had a look at a couple of different concepts, and this is one that we really loved and put forward. And Sam and I sort of developed a couple of different ideas, and we just thought that this one really stood out when we think about, you know, at the moment we've been talking so much about coronavirus over the past couple of weeks, but one of the biggest topics that everyone was tackling creatively this year was actually the climate crisis. So we think this was a really unique take on that topic.
And you've entered it, one of the categories you've entered it into is best use of honesty. Well, why did you choose that one, Lauren?
So I think it was, as Sam said, the kind of the raw emotion that we try to convey through the copy that's presented in the idea, and really bring in kind of the climate crisis to the forefront, and trying to make people understand the emotional side and real impact it's having on the world and other living beings. So that use of honesty in terms of, you know, presenting people with this quite lovely sort of appearing love letter, and then once you start reading the words and understanding that you are not only the cause for the destruction of this animal's habitat, but you're also possibly the solution to saving their existence. And I think having that really kind of big realization is very hard hitting, and, you know, an honest look at how we are both the problem and the solution here.
Yeah, and Sam, it appears to me, I mean, it's a lovely idea, but it's something that WWF will probably love and probably use, and we see that a lot when it comes to the Chip Shop Awards, ideas that we don't understand why they haven't been used. What do you think the possibilities are for the idea itself?
Possibilities. Well, I think what's so nice about it is actually on the creative, we created a hashtag that sits at the bottom, which is love letters to humanity. And what we really love about the idea is that it becomes something really shareable, and people will actually start to realize that that they can think in that way as well, and start to see things from the animal's perspective. And maybe it becomes something that people can kind of run with themselves, which we thought would work really nicely as well. It becomes very like long-standing and campaignable in that way, because you've got kind of that hashtag that sits alongside it. But it's almost playing on the frivolity of what a hashtag is in a way. It's kind of like, obviously in most cases people just use that for like silly throwaway things that you just see on Twitter, but we wanted to kind of bring it back to being something a little bit more important, and hope that would hopefully to kind of drive that idea through social channels as well as just the kind of traditional print media as well. Sure. But I think, yeah, you said that it's not something that WWF might traditionally run, and I think that's because what we're so used to seeing from them is those just images of pandas and polar bears, and actually it's so nice to hear from those animals rather than just see pictures of them, I think, and that has an emotional impact on us as humans, because that's how we communicate.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like I say, great idea. What was it like though? I always wonder, the Chip Shop Awards are the creative awards without any rules or restrictions. What was it like working on a brief that was absolutely, you can do what you like? How different was that for you, Lauren? How different was it for you?
I think Sam would agree that we kind of embraced that freedom with a lot of passion, and I think for us, having no constraints is actually quite a luxury. Obviously, we all know, especially in this world, that sometimes it can be, quite restrictive and difficult working to, a client's sort of asks. But when those are taken away, it's quite interesting to see where your mind goes and what different approaches you can take. And especially, this idea of not using the animals is something that maybe wouldn't have necessarily come if we'd, followed guidelines perhaps, or the more traditional imagery that WWF use. I think we also, try to also kind of bear in mind things that are important to the brand as well, and play with that in a different way. So for example, their iconic logo, we still thought that's really recognizable, and how can you put that into an idea that isn't, using a really captivating photograph of an animal, but still is really distinctive. So I think you can see from our love letters, we've got just the, black logo at the bottom there, and everyone knows that logo, and it just shows that you can still use the heritage of the brand to convey an important message, and have maybe slightly more sort of arresting copy, and to draw an audience in and still associate it with an iconic brand. And I think having the freedom to do that is how we came up with a very different idea for them. Obviously, kind of exploring the idea of climate change and the climate crisis, there's a lot of sort of shock tactics being used, and a lot of very visual sort of huge mounds of waste or melting ice caps, and we wanted to just come at it from a different angle and look at it from a more emotional side, and having the freedom of such sort of like an open brief, as you described it, is what led to this this concept.
Right. Well, the nominations will be announced in the coming weeks, so good luck to you both. I hope to see your names attached to some of those. And thank you for joining me in the latest episode of Chip Shop Chat. And thank you to our audience for joining us as well. Plenty more of these to come.